Hello to all of you dear audiences of the Elixir of Awareness channel all over the world. In episode 35, we're going to talk about the important topic of the process of growing old, and our main source is a book called How to Age by Anne Karpf. First of all, it's necessary to remember that watching this episode isn't only for the old people, and even if you're young and afraid of old age, it can be very useful and suitable for you. So stay with us.
Don't forget to like and click the subscribe button for more weekly updates on mental health and self-development. Thank you.
In the modern world, there are usually two general views about old age. The first look is an unrealistic look that we see in advertisements. For example, you see old men or old women who are very cheerful and happy and live at the peak of health. But from another point of view, for example, we see older adults in the cinema industry who are extremely depressed, exhausted, and upset. People who are very isolated and helpless. The author of this book, Mrs. Anne Karpf, is looking for a third way. And he puts forward realistic and brilliant ideas that probably will be interesting for you too. It seems we're living in a constant fear of aging in the modern world, to the extent that maybe the topic of our episode will cause anxiety for some of you. Perhaps today the biggest compliment to someone is to tell them how much younger you look for your age. And hearing this sentence is very pleasant for that person. But we explain how these cultural conditions painfully shape the experience of aging in our minds. The great American filmmaker and actor Woody Allen says, "I'm not afraid to die, I just don't want to be there when it happens." Despite the large and strange makeup and beauty industry that has over $300 billion in turnover and advertises how not to grow old, but this book talks about how to enter old age better. Mrs. Anne Karpf believes that although most people think that aging is a separate phase we enter suddenly, the aging process starts from the moment of birth and continues gradually. In fact, we're aging from the moment we're born, and this happens continuously. So this isn't a stage that's a separate part of life. It's interesting to know that our brain doesn't lose its ability completely in old age. Churchill was making plans for the world at 70. Also, the great architect Frank Lloyd Wright presented the design of the massive New York Museum at 80. And as we will say in this episode, also many other elders and effective people showed the peak of their creativity in their old age. In fact, in old age, we reach an optimized and more coherent creativity from a rebellious creativity that we carry with us from our youth. Many cultures of different societies are against aging. That's why people have a pitiful view of the aging. When some people see old people, they consider them an unpleasant image of the future, and therefore they make them brittle and alone. For example, Germany has been sending its old population to Eastern European countries for many years, thereby accepting younger immigrants. Of course, they say that the reason for this is the cheaper treatment costs in Eastern European countries, but it seems that there are other hidden reasons for this issue. Maybe it's because societies covertly but cruelly kill the old people personality before they die normally. How old are you? And if you're middle-aged or older adult, what's your experience of this period?
Don't forget to like and click the subscribe button for more weekly updates on mental health and self-development. Thank you.
Most people think that at some point in our lives we suddenly grow old and become a different person. But it can be said, this is very similar to the image that we'd about high school, where we thought we'd become a new person if we went to high school. While this isn't the case, and it will happen continuously. The truth is that we're the same person in old age, even if some of our characteristics and habits change over time. But in the modern world, life seems to be divided into two parts, one before old age and one after old age, and this is a wrong idea. Although many of our characteristics change in old age, such as our five senses or our physical strength, but other characteristics such as the power of empathy are strengthened in us. In old age, our way of looking at life deepens, we fall in love even more, and our ability to enjoy simple things is strengthened. For example, even a simple sunbathing or listening to the birds sound can be enjoyable. It seems that unlike when we're young, when we're looking for external approval, in old age, we're looking for pleasure and satisfaction in the inner world. In fact, old age, with all the physical limitations it brings for us, but spiritually, it can provide us with new experiences. Research shows that contrary to popular belief, the worst period of life is between 30 and 40 years old, not old age. Because during this period, we usually feel anxious and stressed and look for answers to the endless questions of our mind. But after middle age, people reach a kind of acceptance of themselves and the surrounding world. Maybe old age isn't as scary as the media shows. And maybe today, young people are more depressed than the older adults. For example, research shows that the suicide rate among the older adults is at the lowest level. If we consider suicide as a measure of dissatisfaction with life, it seems that the older adults commit it less than all other age groups. In the movie industry, there are also interesting views on aging. For example, you probably watched the movie The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. The story of this movie is about a man whose life goes in reverse. Or the big movie starring Tom Hanks, which is about how the soul of an old man enters the body of a young man. But it seems that the ending of most of these movies is bitter. All people return to their previous age, or they die. You've probably heard the story of Peter Pan, who never grows up. We'd like to say that one day the bubble of denial of we Peter Pans of the modern era will also collide with the sharp edges of reality and burst. Existence and time can't be separated from each other. We live in time. Existence and time are connected with each other. So instead of denying and running away from old age, it's better to be more accepting. Because of this admission, more various possibilities are waiting for us.
Don't forget to like and click the subscribe button for more weekly updates on mental health and self-development. Thank you.
Another common image of the older adults that's shown in the media and is a kind of insult is that they're shown as human beings in need of care. While this is often not the case. Of course, there are cases where older adults need care, but most of them don't. It's interesting that most of the older adults take care of themselves and those around them. Statistics show that it isn't fair to think of these people as needing care, because in reality it isn't like that. Many of our common ideas about old age are influenced by the culture of the society in which we live and grew up. Think about what image your society reflects of the aging. Because the culture of the society we live in impresses our mentality towards the aging. For example, you may think that depression is an inevitable event in old age, but this isn't the case at all. Because statistics show that depression is much more common in youth. Or, for example, you may think that Alzheimer's is only for the older adults, but in fact it isn't, and Alzheimer's doesn't only occur in old age. When we get Alzheimer's, we may even forget our name, but we may not lose much of our ability. This means that even Alzheimer's can't destroy all the particles of our being. We will have some things left. For example, it's interesting to know that if someone plays an instrument, they can play an instrument even after Alzheimer's. Try to forget that image of dependence on hearing aids, dentures, glasses, or crutches and things that the media shows. Of course, these tools are very practical and useful because they help people live more easily. But if we only remember the image of older adults through this help tools, we've ignored a significant part of their ability. It's important to give more importance to the older adults because they're full of complexities and distinct and ponderable characteristics. If you pay attention, even in the world of Disney animations, the negative character is usually an old person. Presenting this image to children causes a wrong and scary idea of old age to be registered in the mind. Another common misconception is that we usually think that in old age we become like children again and act like children. But in reality, it isn't like that. Because older adults need freedom in their lifestyle in their old age, but usually we want security for our loved ones instead of freedom, and this affects on their freedom of action. In a book titled Being Mortal, there's a painful story of what happens in a nursing home. In that nursing home, in order to take care of the older adults, nurses severely reduce the quality and level of enjoyment of their lives. For example, an old man who may like biscuits but isn't given them because sweet things are harmful to him. Or, for example, an old woman who can live 1 year longer if she do a surgery. But the question here is to what quality? And this is a question that the person itself must answer. People around them usually think about their safety instead of thinking about the quality of life of these people and their freedom of action. But ask yourself, if you're treated in the same way, won't you get angry and make excuses like a 10-year-old child? So treat the older adults as you'd expect to be treated. They say that the last song of a concert has the most impact on the evaluation of that concert. It's always the last moments in the end that's important, and it's very important how the end of our life is spent. Most of us aren't ready for the ending, and maybe accepting this end can be the only way to save. Death isn't a problem that needs to be solved, but it's a reality that can be accepted and lead a better life. We already talked about the issue of life and death in the 4th episode of the Elixir of Awareness channel. We suggest that you watch it in your free time if you're interested.
Don't forget to like and click the subscribe button for more weekly updates on mental health and self-development. Thank you.
On the other hand, the image of an older adult, active, healthy, rich, handsome, and happy person can't be a realistic image. But big media use this image to sell their cosmetic products. The problem is that maybe millions of people watching these ads will conclude that they don't look like the older adults in the TV commercials, while the actual picture of old age is what we see not in the media, but in our normal life. Unfortunately, usually women in old age are more affected and injured, because a lot of money moves in the cosmetics industry. Once upon a time in America, due to racial discrimination, blacks tried to pretend to be white in order to benefit from benefits. And the new approach in the modern world does the same thing with humans. People try to do everything to get closer to the image of standards of older adults in advertisements. But let's not forget that civil rights movement won when they stopped pretending to be what they weren't. That is, they were as they really were. Maybe the kind of attention we experience in old age differs from when we were young. Imagine a middle-aged woman who's always competing with younger girls. Then it's clear that she'll always feel suffering. Somewhere we've to decide to stop this competition. For example, we rarely see the actual image of the bodies of older adults in the media. People need to live as they're, not according to the standards of media and society. Walmart launched a line of cosmetics aimed at 8 to 12-year-old girls. Think for a moment why an 8-year-old girl should be worried about her skin wrinkles at an older age from now. The University of California has conducted a study on the change in mental strength of people in old age. Well, we definitely lose a lot of things, and this is a fact that we've to admit. But the good news is that we get a lot of things. For example, researchers found that word-by-word memory decreases in old age. For example, people find it difficult to remember the contents of a box. But another aspect of memory grows in us, which increases the power of mixing and categorizing different subjects. It can be said that in our old age, we understand the depth of issues better. Also, during old age, the cooperation of the 2 hemispheres of the brain increases, so the ability to show kindness, understanding, and acceptance of others is much more than normal people. For example, our own parents may be strict people, but you'll see that when they become grandfathers or grandmothers, they'll behave differently with their grandchildren and show more flexibility and patience because of the lived experience they went through. As we said, many people did their most important work in their old age. We've talked about the importance of the death of consciousness many times in the Elixir of Awareness channel. But the problem is that most of us are tired of escaping of death. That is, we think that our opportunity is over, and thus we take away all the chances for progress and prosperity. But while accepting the phenomenon called death, we should try to live with any quality until the last moment, because we've time until the last moment. Don't forget the great philosopher Immanuel Kant wrote the Critique of Pure Reason, which divides the world of philosophy into before and after this book, when he was about 60 years old. Sophocles wrote the Oedipus Rex at the age of 68. Picasso also painted until the age of 80, and his works were still excellent. Remember, the ability of our brain is very amazing. For example, many people in their old age seek to learn a new language, and this is very exciting. We must live with all our hearts to the last moment, because time is painfully short and passes quickly.
Don't forget to like and click the subscribe button for more weekly updates on mental health and self-development. Thank you.
The book presents some interesting ideas for the older adults. For example, the idea of a third university where older adults with different specialties gather together and provide free training for people who need to learn these specialties. In fact, with this idea, both older adults get out of isolation and people get education without paying. Or, for example, some ads for the sale of houses in Paris are published interestingly, which is for buyers who only intend to invest in real estate. In these advertisements, the age of the homeowner is included in the sales information. For example, this ad for the sale of a house belongs to Suzanne, 70 years old. Now, according to the agreement law, the person can pay all the money to Suzanne and change the house deed to his name. But with the difference that the owner of the house, which is Suzanne, lives in the house until the end of her life, and then the house is handed over to the buyer. The interesting point is the idea that with this method, older adults can travel and have fun with that money while still living in their home for the rest of their lives. On the other hand, buyers can also enjoy good discounts, and this plan is very suitable for people who intend to make long-term investments, and it's actually a win-win game for both sides of the transaction. Or, for example, the idea of mixing nursing homes and kindergartens. In this way, the loneliness of older adults with the presence of children will be removed, and they can also take care of children with the help of younger nurses, and as a result, even the costs will be reduced for governments. It can be said that, unfortunately, in today's world and in many societies, good plans aren't considered for the older adults. Think about whether the society you live in really cares about the older adults. Certainly, we will gradually lose some of our physical abilities during old age, but some societies kill the older adults before natural death, and this death means spiritual death, which is caused by not caring about this important group of people. As we said, women feel the fear of aging more than men. Many women are usually afraid to look at the details of their face in the future, even before reaching old age. And of course, many big sales and advertising organizations make a lot of money from this fear. There are a few superstars who appear in the media with their actual face. The fact is that most 49-year-old women don't look like Victoria Beckham. And maybe not any 61-year-old man can be like Tom Cruise. Maybe it's better to change these ideal images that the world media has made for us. This change isn't going to be easy, but it can bring us one step closer to living without fear of aging. According to research, the new word has always been one of the most frequent repetitive words in the world. Perhaps this is why we see the older adults as representing old and decaying traditions, when this isn't the case. Many people in their old age could implement the most effective social changes in the world. Maybe we won't be able to do all the things in old age, and many of our physical capacities will decrease. But we should make the most of this remaining opportunity and be happy for this short opportunity we've to live in this mysterious world. We've the right to grow up and accept the physiological changes in our bodies during middle age and old age. We've the right to grow old gradually, and we've the right to enjoy this short opportunity of life until the last moment. And finally, we've the right to be ourselves, simple and real currently as we're. The last question of this episode is, which old person do you know who'd the greatest impact on you? Please share your comments with us. Thank you very much for staying with us until the end of this episode.
Don't forget to like and click the subscribe button for more weekly updates on mental health and self-development. Thank you.